Nhlamulo Ndhlela, who is the spokesperson for the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, who joins us live now. Nhlamulo, let's just start firstly with, we've just now received a statement from the EFF that's saying that it's taking the developments in Parliament from last week on the adoption of that fiscal framework to the Western Cape High Court, much like we saw the Democratic Alliance. Could this be something that your political party also is set to potentially doing, to take this matter to court?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. Indeed, we are embarking on a court case of our own, as is the case with the other political parties. MK Party will be lodging its own case pertaining to the unprocedural process that was followed or that led to the conclusion of what is now so-called adopted.
And when you look at this, Nhlamulo, for you, how important will it be that you take the step? And I ask this because for the EFF, when you read their statements, they talk about the fact that Parliament needs to do more when it comes to issues of accountability. And also, this is an institution that found itself under scrutiny, as to say that it's just rubber stamping some of, the agreements, the frameworks and all of that, instead of holding it, the executive to account. So for you, what becomes the most important aspect of this court challenge?
Look, the most important aspect of this court challenge is to ensure that as parliamentarians and as lawmakers, we don't break laws that we make, and that we follow procedures as per the Constitution, because, Parliament draws its powers from the Constitution. So anything that, is not within the framework of the Constitution, or, for instance, in this case, what gives the Parliament the powers through the Monies Bill to change the budget, we ought to be exercising those kind of powers and engaging in those laws within the framework of the law. Flouting those only undermines the constitutionality of the process, the Constitution itself, and the parliamentary processes.
Could we see the three of you possibly join forces, or is it still going to remain three separate cases?
No, we could never find ourselves, joining a case, for instance, with the DA. We're not lazy thinkers. We understand the procedures and the unprocedural processes that were followed and were supposed to have been followed. And from where we are, we have a different angle of how we're going to approach it, and that will then be shared with South Africans, or rather surface of South Africans, when we lodge our papers.
Do you think, when you look at the developments and you speak about the DA, the developments between the DA and the ANC, what do you make of this, number one? And part B of the question is, do you think either one is too maybe uncomfortable or scared to pull the trigger as we're seeing these tensions play out in public?
Well, such is the case when you have a coalition of convenience whose mandate has been instituted by white monopoly capital and business. It is clear from the onset that the chairperson of the DA stated categorically that the business came to them, lobbied them for them to, in effect, save Cyril from impeachment. And this is what it is. And they then said, what, we need to sugarcoat it and make it amenable and sellable to the ANC by calling it a GNU. So now the founding principles of what you so-called a GNU, should we call it a DA-led coalition, is exactly that. The ANC has signed a Faustian pact. They've signed a deal with the devil, and here they are. They find themselves with a party that has always been in opposition, that has got opposing policy posture, and who doesn't share the same ideologies, nor does it share the same agenda, which is to liberate our people and emancipate the poorest of the poor. So that's why you'll continue to find a clash and a deadlock between the two parties. But here's the thing. They remember, a GNU is formed off the back of a crisis. What we have here is, a GNU that the so-called GNU is a crisis in of itself for the country. They're becoming a liability for the country. And the sad thing about it is that, neither of them obviously want to leave because they're enjoying the blue lights. And what's interesting for you to know is that we're aware that there are those within the DA, outside of cabinet, within the party, who are saying, well, you know what, we have to take a hard stance. But those who are ministers, DA ministers within government, they're still enjoying their cushy jobs. And they're saying, hold on, there's no need for us to be so aggressive in our approach and our negotiation with the ANC.
Are you able to tell us, are you able to share who are those?
Oh, of course. The likes of McPherson is one of those, and the party leader, Steenhuisen himself. Those are the individuals who are enjoying the blue lights. And they are saying, look, Helen Zille is just too aggressive in terms of her approach. But Helen Zille, in this case, the chairperson, is towing party line. And she's saying, this is what it is. And you've seen how she can be. And it's just, this is the situation we're faced with. Political infighting, difference in ideology, difference in posture, policy posture, and this is what we then led to succumb to as South Africans.
So,
a crisis.
When you look at this fiscal framework, right, that was adopted, there is, of course, that caveat that we heard about even today when the ANC was speaking at its briefing, that there now needs to be an alternative or some alternatives that are looked at, as opposed to the VAT increase. The Action SA, when they are being interviewed various times, even here on the channel, they are adamant that there's not going to be a VAT increase. In fact, they say there will be alternatives that are found. When you listen to the president says that this is going to be difficult because they now have Treasury that is doing this process. So, in light of everything that is going on right now, do you think Action SA was tricked and we are in fact going to see a VAT increase, or are you confident that we may see some alternatives?
Action SA was hoodwinked into a process that they themselves had no clue what the outcome was going to be. And unfortunately, they've become, a result of exactly a hoodwinked process. So, but I think here's what we need to focus on. The question is, if we as Umkhonto we what would we do? If you look at this budget, they're projecting growth at 1.9%, which is totally a fallacy. Because you cannot even grow, take into consideration the fact that, they're only spending 5% of the budget on infrastructure. We're saying that, you need to increase the investment, ratio in the country. And how you do that, and how do you activate this economy? And you need to activate the economy on expenditure. So you need to double the investment on infrastructure. So up it by another 5%, make it 10%. And then from there, invest that money in what we call network industries, which are your energy, your telcos, your logistics, which are key functions. Remember, infrastructure investment activates productivity, and by productivity, we're talking job creation. And that's how you now start to stimulate the economy. And from that medium-term kind of an investment, you're sure to see a proper increase in terms of GDP growth, easily between 3 and 5%. And that's what we expect, a government to start thinking about when it comes to a pro-poor, a stimulus kind of package. Not this policy posture where you have lazy thinkers who all they're doing is politicking and gerrymandering the numbers just to suit their own narratives or their own constituency, as opposed to suiting the country's agenda.
Nhlamulo Ndhlela, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Spokesperson of the Umkhonto we Party, and the ANC, of course, earlier on in its briefing, saying that yes, while it may be challenging, but for them, the work continues at Treasury in order to be able to find some of those alternatives to the VAT increase. And at the same time, there's a lot of talk about the developments around the government of national unity, because just shortly after the ANC had that briefing, then my colleague Abra Babia spoke to the leader of the Democratic Alliance, who says that they're still committed to the government of national unity. They've sent a document, according to John Steenhuisen, to the ANC. They are awaiting a response as far as those developments in the government of national unity is concerned.